In this video, we'll be looking at the adjustments panel and how we can apply adjustments to our images. Generally, adjustments are used for adjusting color, brightness and contrast, that kind of thing. So we can do that through the image menu, but generally when we use the image menu to do that, it permanently changes our original image. So we want to try and create layers when we're using our adjustments so that we can always step backwards. It just gives us a more flexible workflow by working with the adjustments panel and creating adjustment layers. So to begin with, I'm going to open up a file. I've got it sitting here. It was recently opened, so I can just select it from there. And what we want to do with this image is change the color of the hoodie that we've got here. So to take a look at the adjustments panel, we'll come across here. I've got it open at the moment here, and if you need to access it and you can't see it there, you can always go to Window and then come down to Adjustments to open it up. And we basically got a whole series of adjustments listed here. We can see that the ones running across the top are to do with our exposure and contrast and that kind of thing. The ones underneath that, the next row, they're more creative ways of working. So you can do things like change an image to black and white. You can completely change the color of something by using the hue and saturation. So we've got a whole bunch of adjustments we can run. Now when we look at the image menu, we can see that under there there's also the same selection of adjustments. But like I was saying earlier, when we use these, they actually affect the layer directly. And we want to avoid that. That's called a destructive method or destructive way of working. We want to work in a non-destructive way. So as an example, we can apply an adjustment to the entire image by coming across and just clicking on an adjustment. So let's just say I want to change this image to black and white. I'll just hit the black and white adjustment layer. And if you have a look now at the layers panel, we can see that it has created this adjustment directly above my original background layer. With this adjustment in place, I can now change the opacity level of that adjustment. So if I go to the opacity slider and drag that down, we can see that it starts to reveal the original image underneath. So that's one benefit of having this adjustment separate from the actual layer, is that we can change the opacity level of it to reveal some of our original layer underneath. The other benefit obviously is being able to just get rid of the adjustment if we no longer need it. We can hide it temporarily. We can turn the eye there on and off, or we can just drag that and drop it into the trash can at the bottom of my layers panel. I'm back to my original background layer. Now in this example, I want to change the color of the hoodie, which means I need to select that hoodie in order to change its color. So the first part of the process is to make the selection that I want to apply the adjustment to. And then once I've got my selection, I can then go to my adjustments panel and choose the hue and saturation adjustment to apply it. And the hue and saturation adjustment will assume that whatever area I have selected is the area that I want to run the adjustment across, and it will create a mask that will only apply that adjustment to the selected area. So looking at this hoodie here, its color is contrasted quite well with the background, so I can use some of the selection tools that are based on selecting color. If I come across to my toolbar here, we've got the quick selection and the magic wand. So I'll grab the quick selection tool in this case and make sure that I'm on the add to selection mode. And then I'll just come down here and I can change the size of the brush here by using my left and right square brackets on the keyboard. I'll use my right arrow there just to increase the size of the brush, and I'll Command or Control plus to zoom in a bit closer here. All right, so starting at the top, I'll just click and drag down and select as much of the hoodie as I can as I go down. Let's grab most of it there, and then I'll grab the inside here. And once I've grabbed most of that, I'm also going to run a select and mask just to help smooth out the edges. Now we can see that I've grabbed this area here, which is not what I want, so I'll just reduce the size of my brush by hitting the left square bracket there, and I'll just change to my subtract from selection mode up here in the top left corner, and then just click in there to deselect that area between his arm and the hoodie. Great. I'll switch back to the add to mode and I'll just click on this area in here to grab the edge of the hoodie. And that's pretty much got most of what I need. There's a little bit of his hair there, which I can try and fix up a bit later. All right, so now I'm going to go up to my select and mask in the control panel. I'll click on select and mask, and that opens up my select and mask workspace. I have my toolbar over here on the left hand side, and then I've got the properties for the select and mask over here on the right. With the properties, I can change the view mode here. I can view this against a ruby lith background, or I can view it against a white background or a black background. The black background in this case gives me a pretty good indication of what that edge is looking like, so I'll leave it on the black background. We can change the opacity level of that black background to reveal the background, or just take it up to 100% black, which I will leave it on. Now you can try and use Photoshop's edge detection in this case. I could turn the smart radius on and then drag the slider across to the right, and then Photoshop will attempt to detect the edge. It's done a pretty good job at doing that. If it struggles to do that though, you can drag that back down, turn it off, and I can actually tell Photoshop where to focus around the edge by using my toolbar. So I'll grab my toolbar over here, and we've got a number of selection tools here to help us select the edge. If I wanted to get Photoshop to focus on a particular part of the edge, then I can use this Refine Edge brush tool. So I'll select that and then come across and just work my way around the edge here. I can change the size of the brush by using my square bracket again, so I can increase the size by hitting the right bracket and then the left bracket to reduce. So I'm just going to very quickly drag my brush around the edge here, and we can see that as I do that, it is smoothing out the edge a little bit. I'll zoom in a bit closer, Command plus or Control plus to zoom in. I can hold my space bar down as well to help scroll around the page, and I'll just very quickly brush around the edges to help smooth it out. Now I'm not going to spend too much time trying to get this smooth. I'll just do this rather quickly so we can jump straight into the adjustment and have a look at how we can change the color of this hoodie once I've got most of it selected. It's a bit messy around the sleeve there, but for the sake of the exercise, I'll just leave that alone. And there we go. I'll just do this side here very quickly. That's a little bit messy over there. And I'll just drag that edge up a little bit. Cool, all right. So we've smoothed some of that edge. It is a very rough selection, but we're more interested in looking at this adjustment and how we can change the color of the hoodie. So now that I've selected as much as I can there in the limited time that I have, I'll come across and I'm ready to output this. So when I'm outputting, I'm simply going to output this as a selection. So it's just going to go back into my marching ants. So I'll click OK on that. And then we have the marching ants still running around the outside there. And I'm ready to apply the adjustment. So in applying the adjustment, I'll come up to my adjustment panel, and the adjustment I'm going to apply is the hue and saturation adjustment, because that's the adjustment we can use to change the color of our selection. So when I do that, I'll select it by clicking on it, and we get this hue and saturation layer sitting directly above my background layer. We haven't seen anything change as yet because we haven't changed any of the properties in my hue and saturation. We can see that with the hue and saturation as well, with that layer, there's a thumbnail there. Now that's actually a mask which is protecting the background and his skin, and it's only going to run the adjustment on the selection that I've made. I can hold Option or Alt down and click on that in the thumbnail in the layer, and we can actually see the mask in action. We've got a white area which will reveal, and we've got a black area which will conceal the adjustment. I'll Option or Alt click back on that again so we can actually see the image. And I'll click back onto the properties for the hue and saturation adjustment, and then we can come up to the properties panel here to play around with it. Now, if I wanted to change this hoodie to say blue, then what I can do in this properties panel is come down here, there's a little colorize button. Now, if I select that colorize button, we'll see that the hoodie has changed to this red color, and we can see I've got this hue slider running across the top here. Now, if I click and hold down on that hue slider, wherever I drag that slider, it will apply that color that I'm over. So if I want a blue hoodie, I'll drag it across into the blue area here. Then I've got my saturation level. If I want to increase that hue, so the more intense blue, so to create a more intense blue, I can drag that saturation along to the right. And then I've got my lightness level. So if I want more of a pastel blue, I can drag the lightness up, or a darker blue, drag it to the left. I'll leave it at about there. Okay, so we've now applied that adjustment. Now, if I zoom in a little bit closer on this, we can see that There are some areas where I would need to fix up this blue running around the outside, and I can do that. It's pretty straightforward. All I need to do is come across to my layers panel and click onto that mask again. So I'm making sure that I've got that border running around the outside of the hue and saturation black and white mask. And then I can actually use a paintbrush to paint in white on the areas where I want the blue to appear, or if there's any blue overlapping onto the skin or any other area, I can use my black paintbrush to remove the blue. So coming across to the paintbrush tool in the toolbar, there it is, I'll just select it. And so to apply some blue over these areas that are still looking yellow, I can make sure that I've got my white sitting here in the fill color as the foreground. So that's it there, I've got white as my foreground color. I'll come up here and check the settings for the brush. So I can change the size of the brush from up here. The hardness, I'll bring the hardness up a little bit so it has a sharper edge. And the opacity level, I'll bring it up to 100% just so that it is solid blue when I'm painting. Okay, so moving my way around these yellow areas, I'll just paint anywhere that should be blue. And I'm essentially painting on the mask at the moment. I'm painting white on my mask, which is revealing the adjustment, that blue adjustment. Now, if there were any areas where I wanted to remove the blue, I could paint using a black ink on my brush. So I'll just very quickly go over that. Now, let's just say I color out here in blue accidentally. I can come across, I can change the color of my ink by using my little swap button here. Now I've got a black set as the foreground color, and I can paint the blue away. So that's hiding the adjustment by using my black ink. Great. Okay, so there we have it. I've adjusted the overall color. It was a bit quick and dirty, but I've got most of it done. I'd need to go in and maybe refine a bit of the edges. But as we can see, applying adjustments as a layer directly above our original gives us that flexibility to go back to our original if we ever need to, or also gives us the flexibility to change the opacity level of the effect that we've run, so it does start to reveal our original color underneath. There's quite a few adjustments that you can play around with. Often brightness and contrast is a good one when we want to brighten up an image and increase its contrast. We've also got under there our levels and our curves as well. So we can play around and really get some interesting effects when we add adjustments to our images, and we can end up with quite a few adjustments layered directly above our original layer. Now that we've added some adjustments, we'll take a look at adding some filters to our images in the next video. See you there.